The morning sun filtered through the towering windows of the mansion, casting long beams across the polished marble floors, and David, the millionaire, moved through his vast home with a sense of restless unease. He sipped his coffee as he walked past the glimmering chandeliers and walls adorned with priceless artwork, but none of the beauty or wealth around him could calm the persistent worry gnawing at his mind. Only yesterday, he had learned that Maria, his devoted housekeeper who had worked in his household for more than a decade, had been missing for several days without explanation, and though he had always admired her quiet diligence and unwavering commitment, he now found himself gripped by an unfamiliar concern. It was unlike anything he had felt in his life of structured routines and calculated decisions. There was a personal, human urgency that no business meeting or financial gain could satisfy. He had called her countless times, each ring echoing into voicemail, leaving him with nothing but a growing knot of anxiety. He thought of the gentle way she managed the mansion, the way she anticipated his needs without being asked, the countless meals prepared and rooms cleaned with quiet care, never complaining, never drawing attention to herself. And now, the thought that she might be struggling, suffering, or worse, struck him with a force that made the opulence of his home feel hollow and meaningless. He decided, almost impulsively, that he could no longer wait for explanations or excuses. He needed to see her, to understand, to find the truth behind her absence. As he drove through the narrow, winding streets toward the part of the city where Maria lived, the contrast between his life of luxury and her modest surroundings became starkly clear, each crack in the pavement and faded paint on the buildings reflecting a reality far removed from the world of marble floors and gold-plated faucets he inhabited. When he finally arrived, he found a small, weathered apartment building, its doors sagging on creaking hinges, the stairwell dimly lit and smelling faintly of mildew. And he realized that for all the power and wealth he commanded, he had never truly considered the life his staff might lead outside the walls of his mansion. He climbed the narrow steps, heart pounding with a mixture of apprehension and resolve. And when he knocked, the door opened just enough to reveal Maria, her face pale, eyes weary, yet brimming with a quiet dignity that struck him deeply. She tried to offer a small smile, brushing past him as though his presence was an intrusion, muttering softly that she was fine, that everything was under control, but the exhaustion etched into her face, the lines of sleepless nights and worry, told a story her words could not. And then he saw the small cot beside the wall, where a tiny newborn slept under a thin, threadbare blanket, the baby's chest rising and falling in delicate rhythm, a fragile testament to life and struggle. David's breath caught in his throat as the realization hit him. Maria had been sleeping in the hospital with her newborn because she had no other place to go, no warm bed, no comfort, only the cold floors of a sterile hospital room and the constant anxiety of trying to protect her child. His mind raced, images of his own home, his endless comfort, and resources flooding in contrast with this small, brave woman who had endured so much in silence. And he felt an unexpected surge of emotion, a mix of guilt, admiration, and an urgent desire to act. He knelt beside Maria, careful not to disturb the baby, and gently asked questions, listening intently as she spoke in halting words about the challenges she faced, the exhaustion, the loneliness, the nights she had cried quietly after her shifts, knowing that the world outside her apartment and the hospital had offered her little support. Each word, each pause, each tear that threatened to fall made David more determined, more aware that this was not just a matter of charity, but of human decency, a responsibility that transcended employment and hierarchy. He noticed the small details, the frayed edges of her blanket, the way she held the baby as if the world's weight rested upon her arms, the soft hum of lullabies she whispered to soothe her child. And he realized that while he had accumulated wealth beyond measure, the courage, love, and resilience in this tiny apartment were worth infinitely more than any asset he owned. That morning, as the sun climbed higher and the city outside carried on unaware of the quiet struggle inside the worn walls, David made a silent vow to himself. He would ensure that Maria and her newborn would never again endure such hardship, that the warmth of home and the comfort of security would finally be theirs. And in that moment, kneeling beside a woman who had given everything silently, faithfully, and courageously, he felt a profound shift within himself, a recognition that true wealth was not in the possessions one amassed, but in the lives one touched, the hope one restored, and the compassion one allowed to guide action. The mansion, the marble floors, the gold and crystal, it all seemed distant, almost irrelevant, as David focused entirely on Maria and the fragile, beautiful life she held in her arms. And he knew, deep in his heart, that nothing he had achieved in business or wealth would ever feel as significant as the promise he had just made to protect, support, and honor this small family that had quietly endured so much in the shadows of a world that often overlooked them. Within days, David had taken careful steps to ensure that Maria and her newborn would be safe, comfortable, and cared for, creating a transformation that seemed almost miraculous compared to the cramped, worn apartment where she had been struggling. He arranged for a bright, fully furnished apartment near his mansion, a space filled with warm sunlight, soft colors, and gentle touches that immediately made Maria feel as if she had stepped into a world she had only dreamed about. Every corner of the apartment reflected thoughtfulness, a soft crib lined with clean, thick blankets for the baby, tiny clothes folded neatly on a low shelf, and a small table stacked with books on childcare and parenting, as well as stories for when the baby grew older. David personally oversaw the preparation, ensuring the environment was not just functional, but filled with warmth, care, and a sense of dignity that had been absent from her previous life. He hired a part-time nanny to assist Maria, understanding that even the most resilient mother needed rest, companionship, and guidance, and he made sure that she had access to medical care, nutritious meals, and a small support network of professionals who could answer any questions she had about raising her child. But beyond the material comforts, David invested something far more valuable: his attention, his respect, and his genuine concern for Maria's well-being. He spent time with her, listening to her stories about her life, the sacrifices she had made, the challenges she faced, and the dreams she had quietly set aside, giving her the opportunity to speak without fear or reservation. He encouraged her to pursue education and skills she had long postponed, helping her see that her life could expand beyond survival, that she had potential and value in her own right. One evening, as the city lights shimmered outside the window, David found Maria sitting in a soft chair, cradling her baby and staring out at the skyline, her face reflecting exhaustion but also a glimmer of hope. He approached quietly, not to intrude, but to offer companionship and reassurance, saying simply, "You don't have to do this alone anymore." Maria's eyes filled with tears, not of shame or despair, but of relief and gratitude. The weight of years of struggle momentarily lifted from her shoulders. She realized that she no longer had to fight the world alone, that she could care for her child without fear of cold floors, empty cupboards, or sleepless nights without support. David's presence, gentle and consistent, became a source of reassurance, a reminder that someone saw her, recognized her strength, and wanted to make her life better without expecting anything in return. Over the next few weeks, Maria began to settle into a routine that was nurturing rather than punishing. She sang lullabies to her child in the mornings as sunlight poured through the windows, cooked healthy meals with ingredients she could afford for the first time in years, and even began small online courses David had encouraged her to take, reigniting a curiosity and creativity that had lain dormant under the weight of exhaustion and worry. The baby thrived in the new environment, growing stronger and more alert each day, responding to Maria's touch and voice with bright eyes and soft coos that filled the apartment with life. David continued to check in, not to assert control, but to offer support, celebrating small milestones with quiet joy and allowing Maria to feel a sense of pride and achievement that went beyond survival. He understood that security and comfort alone were not enough. Dignity, hope, and the ability to dream were equally essential for a life rebuilt. The neighborhood slowly noticed the change as well. Maria, once withdrawn and weary, began to smile openly, interact with neighbors, and even share her story carefully, emphasizing how small acts of kindness could ripple outward and inspire others. The presence of someone who had truly cared transformed not just her life, but also the energy around her. Her laughter became a quiet testament to resilience, her calm confidence a lesson in the power of empathy and support. Meanwhile, David found himself unexpectedly changed as well. The act of giving, of stepping into Maria's world with genuine concern and action, awakened something in him that wealth alone had never satisfied. A sense of purpose and human connection that was richer than any investment or business achievement. He realized that his ability to effect change, to restore hope and security to someone who had been invisible to the world, was the most profound measure of his own fortune. He witnessed Maria's growth in confidence, her gradual reclaiming of agency over her life, and he understood that this transformation was not just about material comfort, but about belief. Belief in her strength, her worth, and her potential. The apartment became a sanctuary, a place of laughter, learning, and love, where Maria could nurture her child without fear, and where the baby could grow surrounded by safety, warmth, and opportunity. David observed quietly, marveling at how quickly the shadow of despair that had once hung over Maria lifted, replaced by light and hope, and he felt a deep satisfaction that had nothing to do with money and everything to do with human connection. In these days of adjustment and care, Maria's gratitude was evident not only in words but in the calm confidence with which she navigated her new life, the careful attention she gave her child, and the small, brave steps she took toward her own dreams. David realized that this scene, once filled with exhaustion, fear, and quiet suffering, had been transformed into one of dignity, resilience, and love, and that the ripple of this single act of compassion would extend far beyond what either of them could fully comprehend. As Maria tucked her baby into the crib each night and watched him drift into peaceful sleep, she felt a sense of security she had never known, a feeling reinforced each time David offered guidance, encouragement, or simply a listening ear. And in this shared space of safety and hope, both mother and child began to thrive, while David, observing quietly from the edges of this newfound life, understood in a way he never had before that true wealth was measured not in possessions, but in the ability to touch lives, restore hope, and foster love where it had once been scarce. As weeks turned into months, the transformation in Maria's life became increasingly profound, not only in the physical comforts surrounding her and her newborn, but in the intangible strength, confidence, and hope that began to radiate from her every action, a change David observed with quiet satisfaction and deep respect. The small apartment near his mansion had become a sanctuary, filled with sunlight, warmth, and the gentle sounds of a baby's laughter and coos, a stark contrast to the cold hospital floors and sleepless nights Maria had endured before. The child, thriving under attentive care, began to respond to his mother's voice with smiles and the soft gurgles of recognition, and each tiny milestone. The first laugh, the first reaching hand, the first grasp of a small toy, felt monumental to Maria, a validation of her efforts and a sign that her life had shifted from survival to nurturing. David, though he remained humble about his role, continued to visit, not as an overseer, but as a supportive presence, offering encouragement, guidance, and occasionally a quiet conversation over tea, allowing Maria to share both her challenges and her triumphs without judgment. He marveled at her resilience, the way she had taken the opportunities he provided and transformed them into empowerment, reclaiming her sense of identity and purpose beyond the duties of housekeeping and the trials of poverty. Maria began to explore personal aspirations that had been buried under years of relentless work and financial struggle, enrolling in online courses and reading books that had long fascinated her, discovering talents and interests she had not realized she possessed. David encouraged her curiosity and learning, sometimes sitting with her to discuss ideas or explore topics she found intriguing, fostering an environment in which she could grow intellectually, emotionally, and creatively. Outside the apartment, the world began to notice the subtle, yet profound change in her demeanor. Neighbors who had once seen her hurried, tired, and withdrawn now witnessed a woman who moved with quiet confidence, smiled readily, and engaged with those around her with warmth and grace, the struggles that had once defined her life giving way to resilience and hope. Word of her story quietly spread, shared in small conversations, often with emphasis on the profound effect of empathy, kindness, and the human capacity to transform lives through action rather than words. Through her example, Others began to recognize the struggles that existed quietly behind closed doors and to consider the impact they might have if they offered support, mentorship, or simple acts of kindness. Maria, mindful of her journey and the generosity that had enabled it, often reflected on the lessons she had learned, that resilience could coexist with vulnerability, that asking for help was not weakness, and that one act of compassion could alter the course of a life in ways unimaginable. David, observing her growth, felt a shift within himself as well, a deepening awareness that the greatest impact of wealth was not in accumulation or display, but in the capacity to provide safety, opportunity, and hope, to touch lives and inspire confidence in those who had been overlooked or forgotten. He saw the bond between Maria and her child flourish, a relationship nurtured not only by love but by the stability and security he had helped create, and he understood that this bond, strong and unshakable, would shape the child's future in ways that no financial investment alone could achieve. The apartment became a place of celebration, learning, and quiet joy, with the sounds of reading, lullabies, and laughter filling the air, and each evening Maria would reflect on the incredible changes in her life, grateful for the support that had lifted her from despair and propelled her toward hope. The baby, once fragile and uncertain, grew robust and curious, exploring the small world around him with the assurance of a life filled with care and security, while Maria, now confident in her role as a mother and an individual, began to dream of additional goals she could pursue, from education to small entrepreneurial projects that would allow her independence and further growth. David, though remaining unobtrusive, witnessed the ripple effects of his intervention extend beyond Maria's immediate life. Other staff in his mansion, previously distant and transactional in their relationship with him, began to approach their work with renewed trust and engagement, inspired by the visible demonstration of compassion and respect they had observed. Maria herself, through careful sharing of her story, encouraged others to recognize the struggles in their own communities and to act, to offer support, to provide dignity where it had been denied, and to inspire hope through tangible action rather than idle sympathy. The apartment, once a place of temporary refuge, became a symbol of possibility, a testament to the power of human connection and the enduring impact of one person's willingness to see, acknowledge, and act on the suffering of another. David, reflecting on the journey from the first day he had discovered Maria and her newborn in the hospital to the thriving, hopeful life that had emerged, understood that his greatest achievements were not measured in wealth, investments, or accolades, but in the lives he touched, the hope he restored, and the enduring gratitude he witnessed in the woman whose resilience had been nurtured into strength. Maria, now smiling freely, speaking with confidence, and nurturing her child with unwavering care, embodied the profound potential of human compassion, illustrating that even the smallest gestures of recognition and support could catalyze remarkable transformations. And as the city outside continued its relentless rhythm, the lights of the apartment glowed softly against the evening sky, a beacon of change, resilience, and love, a quiet monument to what could be achieved when empathy was coupled with action. In that serene space, David, Maria, and the child shared moments of laughter, learning, and growth, the echoes of hardship fading into memory, replaced by a future shaped by care, opportunity, and the undeniable truth that true wealth lay not in the accumulation of things, but in the ability to create life-altering, lasting impact on the lives of others. And in those moments, as Maria held her child close, singing softly while David observed from the background with quiet pride, all three understood that the story of struggle, compassion, and transformation was one that would resonate far beyond the walls of the apartment, serving as a reminder that every act of kindness, every gesture of understanding, and every decision to help could ripple outward in ways that touched not just one life, but countless others, leaving a legacy of hope, gratitude, and profound human connection.